Section 10.3 is going to be all about 30, 60, 90 triangles. We already talked about another special type of triangle. What kind was that? 45, 45, 90. It's okay. We were close. All right, so these two patterns you're going to have to be able to keep separate. Anybody need more time with the objective? Okay. So for our warm-ups, we've got some 45, 45, 90 triangles. On numbers 1 and 2, we are asked to find the length of the hypotenuse. Just as a refresher, we learned that the hypotenuse is equal to what?
L times
Good. A leg times the square root of 2. That's our formula that we can remember. This time they labeled the hypotenuse with x. A leg is 5 square root of 2. Is there anything we can do to simplify that? No, there is not, so we would leave that as our answer. On number 2, again, they labeled the hypotenuse with an x. What's the length of a leg? 22 root 2, and we still have to multiply that by root 2. This one we can simplify. The square root of 2 times the square root of 2 would be what? The square root of 4. And the square root of 4 is 2, so we end up with 22 times 2, which is 44. So x equals 44. Questions, concerns about 1 and 2? All right, number 3, we've also done some like this. Instead of looking for a hypotenuse, now we're looking for a leg. I do not want rounded answers, so I'm going to cross that part off. We will leave these as simplified radicals. This time, what's the hypotenuse labeled? 18 equals, a leg is labeled x square root of 2. In order to get x alone, what operation do I need? Division. We'll divide both sides by the square root of 2. Over here, I'll work on my rationalizing. What do I multiply by to get rid of that radical in the denominator? Over? Good. The top is just 18 root 2. What does the denominator become? Root 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. What could simplify here? 18 over 2 reduces to be 9 over 1, or just 9. So x equals 9 root 2. Questions, concerns about the warm-ups? Ready to move on? On we go. All right, up next we've got the 30, 60, 90 triangle. This one's a little bit more complex than the 45, 45, 90. I'll have to rewrite that other formula since it's getting covered up there. So one of our formulas is that the long leg is equal to the short leg times the square root of 3. How do we know which leg is the long leg and which is the short leg? You're on the right track, except across from the 90 is never considered a leg. What's that considered? That's the hypotenuse, but you're on the right track. Good. Across from the 60, this one is the long leg. If you want to write that on that side, this is the long one. Of course, we just said across from the 90 is the hypotenuse. And across from the 30 then would be the short leg. Okay, so one of our little formulas is that you can find the long leg if you take the short leg times the square root of 3. The other one over here is saying that you can find the hypotenuse if you take the short leg times 2. That's what this one down here that's covered up by the logo says. Now, they labeled this diagram with the short leg being an X. That won't always be the case, but if the short leg is X, then the hypotenuse is times 2, so 2x, and the long leg is times root 3, so x root 3. Now, we'll go through some examples. They could use different variables. They could have numbers in there. So I would be getting attached to these little formulas more than anything else. If you can identify long leg, short leg, and hypotenuse, and you can remember these two little formulas, you'll be in good shape. Anybody need more time on this slide? Okay. Let's try some examples. I'll give you a minute to get at least the first two copied down. I'll save the last two for when we flip the page. We'll talk about them in a moment. Now, of course, whoever made this got a little lazy because these should have degree marks on them so that we know that those are the angles. Okay, on number 1, which side of the triangle did they give us? S, L, or H? H. They gave us the hypotenuse. So they gave us H. The side on the left here, what should I be labeling that with? I mean, we could use an X, but long, that's the long one, so I'll use an L for the long leg. Across from the 30 is the short one. So down at the bottom I'll have an S. Yes, sometimes these will be labeled with X's and Y's instead of L's and S's. But I think it's easiest if we think about it in these terms. So our formulas that we just talked about, one of them was L is equal to S times what? Root 3. The other one was that H is equal to S times what? 2. So when we're getting started, which side do you think we want to find first? The short side. The short side is used in both of them, so it'll be helpful to us to find it. We have the hypotenuse. We want the short side. We should be focusing on this bottom formula first. So 10 is equal to S times 2. Of course, to get S alone, we divide by 2. And the short side has a length of 5. So that would be part of the answer. Then, of course, to find the long leg, it shouldn't be too bad after that. The long leg is equal to the short one, which we just found out was 5, times the square root of 3. Can we do anything to simplify that? No. So that's just it. That's our answer. So the long one is 5 root 3. So there are the missing sides. On example 2, did they give us S, L, or H? They gave us L this time. The one across from the 60 is the long leg. So, of course, across from the 90, I could label that H. Across from the 30 is S. Are we all remembering what it means to be across from the angles? We're all okay with that? Not next to, but across from. All right, which side do you think we should find first? S. Always find S first if it wasn't given to you. That's always going to be the first priority. This time, we'll use the top formula first because they gave us L instead of H. So they said L is 6 root 3 is equal to the short side times square root of 3. I'm hoping most of you can see right now that S is going to equal 6. Of course, we could show that by dividing and canceling out those roots. You don't really need to do that dividing part. I think many of you would be able to see that 6 will be our short side. To find the hypotenuse, we're going to take the short side and do what? Multiply it by 2, and we get the hypotenuse is 12. So then we've got our 2 missing sides. Questions about 1 and 2? Need more time before I take it all away. Okay, as you can see, what's left for today is just a bunch of examples. I'll give you a couple minutes to work on 3 and 4. I'll write those formulas back up at the top, just as a reminder. We'll talk about them in a minute, now that we've got the correct formulas up there. On number 3, which one did they give us? Short side. That is best case scenario, in my opinion, when they give you the short side. Because then you just have to plop that into your 2 formulas to get your other sides. So the hypotenuse in this case is going to be what? 16. We just take 8 times 2. The hypotenuse is 16. And then for the long side, 8 root 3. We just have to plug that number in. It doesn't simplify in this case, so we're done. Questions about number 3? Okay. On number 4, which side did they give us? They gave us the long side. Which side should we find first? The short one. Always go for the short one first. Did anybody figure it out? It's 9. So you don't necessarily need to show it when it's that easy, but you can. And it's not bad to get in the habit of it. 9 root 3 is equal to short times root 3. Now, it will not always happen to where the root 3's just cancel out on both sides. That will not always happen. So I would get familiar with the formula just in case. All right, once we have the short side, the hypotenuse is easy. What is it? 18. Of course, we get that by taking 9 times 2. Questions, concerns about examples 3 and 4? Need more time? Okay, we'll move on. I'll go ahead and leave all of those up there. Let me get the formulas up there correctly this time. We'll talk about them in a minute. All right, while we work on 5 and 6, I'll take 7 and 8 away, so we've got a little space. On number 5, which side did they give us right away? The hypotenuse. Okay, we should find which side next. Short side next. So that's across from the 30-degree angle. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry. Okay. So we would have the 24 is equal to S times 2, which means S is 12. Okay, and that means our long leg is 12 root 3. There's really no work to show for that. You're just plugging that number in to our formula. Okay, if you got 5 done, 6 should have been pretty easy because, again, they started you off with the hypotenuse, which means the short side is 25, and the long leg is 25 root 3. Okay, not necessarily a whole lot of work that needs to be shown on those because we didn't have to do a lot with simplifying our radicals or anything like that. Questions about those two before I take them away and put up 7 and 8? All right. Then here comes 7 and 8. Same formulas, even though they got erased. On number 7, which side do they start you out with? The long leg or the long side. So the one we would want to find next would be the short side. So that's the one across from the 30. We know by our formula the long one is the short one times the square root of 3. So we plug in the 36. How are we going to solve for S? Divide by root 3. Now this again is going to be kind of like some of the ones we saw with 45, 90s, where we need to rationalize this. Okay, the denominator cannot be a radical. So what are we going to multiply it by to rationalize? Root 3 over? Very good. The numerator is just 36 root 3. What's the denominator? Root 9. Square root of 9 is 3. So what can simplify here? The 3 with the 36. So the things that are not under a radical. 36 divided by 3 is 12. root 3. So that is the length of my short side. So on that one, I would expect to see some work. There are maybe this step here with the square root of 9. Maybe that step I wouldn't see. Maybe you could go straight from root 3 times root 3 being 3. But I should see some sort of work when simplifying radicals is involved. Or rationalizing is involved. For the hypotenuse, I don't necessarily need to see a lot of work. To find the hypotenuse, we take the short side and multiply it by 2. So that would give me 24 root 3. Remember that only the number outside the square root gets multiplied by 2. Questions about number 7? Concerns? Warm fuzzy feelings? Void of all emotion? Okay. On number 8, which side do they start us with? Short side, the one across from the 30. It's the short side. Now, when you start with the short side, it's kind of up to you which one you find next. So which one would you like to do? Okay. The long side, we take the short side, 8 root 3, and we multiply it by root 3. Do not get tricked. Just because there was a root 3 there doesn't mean you don't still multiply it by root 3. When we take root 3 times root 3, we get 8 root 9. The square root of 9 is 8 times 3 is. So our long side has a length of 24. What about our hypotenuse? 16 root 3. We just take the short side times 2. 8 times 2 is 16. Still has a root 3 as part of it. Okay, so sometimes these will be really easy, like 5 and 6, where you can pretty much just write down your answers. Sometimes it might take a little bit more work. Questions, concerns? Need more time? Okay, I will pass out your homework, and if I were you, I would expect a homework check tomorrow.